I'm Reverend Mary Martha Thiel, and I'm a teaching chaplain. Consider this metaphor. A chaplain's primary instrument is their interpersonal skills. One chaplain's instrument is a little different than the next chaplain's. The music it can play will also be unique. A tune played on two different instruments will sound different. And any instrument can play music of varying emotional tones. The music made between spiritual caregivers and care receivers is alive. It's interactive. It's improvisational. And its effectiveness depends on the resonance between the two. So it's essential for a chaplain to know their own instrument. In this module, you have already reflected on aspects of your instrument, your interpersonal skills, related to your emotions and reactions, and then your personal values in how to approach spiritual care with Angie. We now turn to another set of considerations, how certain aspects of your identity intersect with dynamics in this case. Here we are thinking about such identifiers as race, class, culture, religious affiliation, or not, gender identity, sexual orientation. This is not a complete list, of course. Each and any of these or others might be important factors that you bring to a spiritual care encounter. Your identifiers influence how attuned you are to various dynamics between you and care receivers. And your identifiers influence how they may respond to you as a spiritual caregiver. Your and their identifiers overlap and interact in a spiritual care relationship. The identifiers are part of the music. Awareness of these dynamics is a core competency of a chaplain's interpersonal competencies. Some aspects of identity can be readily seen. Think some presentations of race. I present as white, Angie as African American. With other aspects of identity, in contrast, one may have more choice about passing with a dominant identity or presenting a non-dominant, more vulnerable identity and working with the consequences. For example, gender identity or sexual orientation. The case is silent about Angie's sexual orientation, for example, and her class. Identifiers outside our conscious awareness, or minimized in importance in an encounter, most often default to assumptions from the point of view of the position of dominance. Notice for yourself, did you assume that Angie is poor or working class? On what basis? How might such an assumption on the part of the white male oncologist be contributing to his dismissal of her spiritual experience? In any particular encounter, each of the chaplain's identities may assist the spiritual care or work against it. The music may be pleasing or discordant. No chaplain is perfect for everyone. Yet you don't have to match the care receiver in all identities in order to offer effective spiritual care. There remain possibilities in every encounter. The ineffable, room for goodwill and creativity, empathy, and improvisation. As a chaplain in my 20s, I often heard, "You are so young to be a chaplain." After a few frustrated starts, I learned I could offer that part of my identity as a bridge rather than as a barrier. I would say, "You're right, I am young. I wonder, what do you know now that you wished you'd known when you were my age? and the visit would be back on track, focusing on the care receiver's values and spiritual resources they were bringing to bear on their current situation. Two of my own identifiers have particularly strengthened my emotional resonance as a chaplain with others different from myself. Having been schooled in second wave feminism from my teens onward has meant that seeing gender power dynamics is wired into the way I see the world. I know how to be bilingual in regard to being female in a male-dominant world. There's the frankness of women when men are not around, and there are adjusted communication patterns when women are in mixed gender company. At least as influential in my chaplaincy dynamics has been my identity as a lesbian. I get feeling vulnerable. I get feeling distrust and even terror. And this set of life experiences has opened my heart and worldview to being an ally to others in non-dominant positions. For me, it's been one of the golden keys to compassion. Being lesbian is what has kicked me into expanding the reaches of my empathy and living into my power and authority on behalf of others. In this way, being gay has worked for me in developing interpersonal competencies in spiritual care. It has worked against me when I've pulled back in caregiving relationships out of fear of negative judgment. I've not needed to disclose this identifier in order to make use of it. When I think of individual persons who've been in my spiritual care over the decades of my career, I think it's perhaps only LGBTQIA folks with whom I've explicitly referenced this part of my identity. Each time I made a conscious choice in service of the care receiver's needs, not my own. In my teaching, it's different. I do mention this part of my story when students apply to our CPE program. In acknowledging my identities, I model the relational authenticity towards which I will be inviting them, and the reflection on their own identities that they will do in CPE. If this aspect of my identity is a barrier for the student at the time of the interview, ours may not be the best setting for their learning. Another lively part of my identity is being Protestant clergy in a Jewishly affiliated geriatric setting. I need to be aware of how complex my Christianity can be for some patients. I have to earn the trust of some Jewish patients, especially those who are themselves Holocaust survivors or who lost extended family members. In a chapter of their lives when they are frail and dependent on caregivers, why would they automatically trust a religious leader with the name of Mary who looks as German as the spelling of my last name? It takes humility and time to establish trust, and lots of applied learning of Jewish history, culture, and spirituality. Unless I'm leading Christian worship, I choose not to wear a clerical collar at work because it can be frightening for my many Jewish patients. Most of our Christian patients are white, working class, Roman Catholic. So my very Christian name, Mary Martha, serves as firm ground. But being a female clergy woman can be a conundrum. So I answer to Sister Mary Martha and Rabbi Mary Martha with affection. In both situations, the titles are expressions of earned respect. Your important identifiers are likely different from mine. Learning how yours impact your assumptions in spiritual caregiving, what kinds of music you can make with care receivers, will be a career-long endeavor. It is an important aspect of developing your interpersonal competencies as a chaplain.